Learning Plan 2B, we'll jump right in here. There's several things we need to cover. We're going to start with the core interviewing skills and then move on to values and goals. All right, so we've covered In My Spirit a little bit, and we've started covering um, engaging, which is the first of the four processes. And so core interviewing skills, they can really be in any of the components. Primarily, you're going to be working with them within one of the four processes. So, as we describe the interviewing skills, it's called OARS, and it's an acronym that stands for Open Questions, Affirmations, Reflections, and Summaries. Now, there's a couple things to note regarding questions and reflections. Up until about a year ago, in about 2014 or so, there was more emphasis placed on using reflections than questions. And the reason why was a lot of the researchers thought that using reflections elicited more information from the client in a session versus using an open or a closed question. So as research progressed, we're finding that that's not necessarily the case. And what we're finding is that open and closed questions can elicit just as much information as a reflection. So the ratio that we used to use, which was a 2 reflections to every question ratio, has kind of been tossed out the window. And so now MI is moving in the direction of, I guess, promoting open and closed questions more so than they have in the past. And I should say that when I say MI, I mean the network of trainers, which is called MINT, the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, which is the organization that I belong to. And they are responsible for training people in using motivational interviewing and conducting the research, et cetera, et cetera. So we have open questions and closed questions, and there is a difference between the two. Open questions leaves the door open for the client to expound upon or elicit information about. It's not something that can only elicit like a specific time frame, a yes or no, a true or false. Those are considered closed questions. So when you think about the information that you want to pull from a client or elicit from a client, you want to think in terms of what am I looking for? What type of information am I looking for? Am I looking for a specific set of data or a yes or no question, or am I trying to get the client to go a little bit deeper and expound upon his or her experience? And so when you're thinking about that and using the interviewing skills, you want to think about, okay, would an open question be good here or a closed question? And so determining that is important. Also, determining what type of reflection to use as well. And we've already discussed reflections a little bit, and I want to spend a little bit of time on reflections here because they are very important and they are somewhat counterintuitive for a lot of newer helpers to use, like I mentioned before. And so you have simple reflections and complex reflections. Simple reflections we've broken down into basically restating what the client has told you. You're just kind of bouncing that back to them. And a complex reflection, you're adding some emotion into your reflection. You're adding some interpretation that you're gathering from the data that they're giving you. Um, and the client will correct you if you're right on the nose or if you're off. But it's important to throw those out there to see actually where the client's at. And so that'll make more sense as we move forward. Um, but as you become more proficient using the skills, you will learn to phrase reflections and phrase questions in ways that will help you determine what direction to move into with the client. All right, moving on to affirmations. As we've mentioned before, affirmations need to be genuine and they need to target a very specific behavior. And it's usually done in conjunction with change talk because when we start hearing a client talk about the desire to change or the ability to change or giving reasons to change or the need to change, then we want to grasp that and really focus in on that. And one of the ways we can do that is by using a genuine affirmation. And so you want to tie it to a very specific behavior. So for instance, I'm meeting with a client and he wants to quit smoking. He's been successful in the past, but continues to relapse. And this time around, he's finally quit and he's been able to abstain from smoking for the longest period he's ever been able to abstain from smoking. And so, a genuine affirmation would be, that sounds great, John. That's very tough for you to do. This is the longest period of abstinence from smoking you've done. That's got to be really tough, but it sounds very rewarding, very exciting for you. Something along the lines of that. So we want to make sure that they target a specific behavior. All right, and then summarizing it's a form of reflections. It's several reflections tied into the conversation. And so you would use a summarization when a client is eliciting. There's a lot of information being elicited, and you want to summarize up to a certain point in the conversation to make sure that you're up to speed on what the client's telling you and that you make sure you are both on the same page. The client's going to tell you whether or not that is true or if something's off. And all you're doing is restating everything that the client has kind of told you up to that point. You're not turning it into questions. Summaries are statements. It's also good to use summaries at the beginning of a session to recap from previous sessions. That also helps build rapport and trust with the client. And it also shows the client that you care. So you're back in that engaging process and you can move a little bit quicker usually into the next process from there if you can summarize your last conversation. And it's going to help you as a helper determine where you left off, and so you're not kind of rehashing things from the past that you've already discussed. So summaries definitely have an important role as well. All right, and then there's a clinical example that you want to take a look at in your text on page 69 and 70. The other aspects of MI to consider, and this is really with any type of helping field, is determining what your client's values and their goals are. And we do this because since this is a client-centered technique, it's important for us to understand who the person is, where they came from, what their background is, so that we can figure out how we can help them. And so one of the best ways to do that is to have the client discuss his or her values with you. A lot of people, especially if you're working in the field of addiction counseling or corrections, clients in the higher risk, higher need population typically don't have this type of insight because they've never been taught it. So it may take some education on your part as a helper to explain what a value is, maybe present a list of values and have them circle their top 5 or top 10 that they feel apply to them, and then just have them kind of expound on those. Why did they choose those, and why did they choose some of these over this one, and just kind of see where they're at with those. And also it's helpful to find out who maybe instilled that value in them, because if you can do that, then you can that might pull in other information that can be useful. And so along with values, people tend to create goals based on their values and beliefs because their values and beliefs are what's going to motivate them to work towards those goals. And so that's another reason why it's important to understand what a person's values are, because you're going to use that later on to help them create tangible goals, goals that they can start working on, because that's really what the end goal is for motivational interviewing, is hopefully that a person who's ambivalent about making a change can talk themselves into either staying where they're at or making the change. So they're choosing one or the other, and they're getting off that fence, so to speak. And so your job is to kind of help guide them to what direction they want to go. Either they're going to stay where they're at or they're going to change. And so if they're willing to move towards the change, then you have the ability to work with them and help them develop some goals. And those goals should be achievable. They should be something that the client comes up with, that they develop, and you're there to kind of be more of a sounding board to them, where they can bounce ideas off of you, and then you can present information in different ways to them to help them see things from different angles. So it's not necessarily about the helper creating the goals for the client. This isn't our treatment, it's the client's treatment, and so they need to be involved. And also research shows that when we as the helper try to instill our goals on the client, they're less likely to work towards those goals. You may have a compliant client in your office that will nod their head, yes, I'll work on these goals. These seem like good goals, when they have had no say in determining if that's actually a realistic goal for them or not. So it's important that the client has an active role in determining what goals they want to accomplish. And you're going to work on that through prioritizing, focusing, and we'll get to those in later chapters. All right, so in this learning plan, you're going to be completing your first video recording. And so I just want to take a few minutes. There's a video here too that you need to watch that will explain the assignments. The video recording is very simple. There's instructions here on how to set up a YouTube account. You're basically going to set that up. You're going to video record yourself in a session with your client. This can be a family member, a friend, coworker, a peer, and you're going to focus on what is listed on the scoring guide. So you want to make sure you have the scoring guide in front of you and you've already reviewed it, so you kind of know what areas you need to cover. And you're just going to have a conversation with your pretend client. Nothing too heavy. This is more about you gaining experience and demonstrating the skills that are listed on the scoring guide versus actually trying to participate in an actual counseling session. That's not what we're here to do. So you can allow the client to talk about whatever's on their mind, and then just remember that you're trying to be present with them, be there, but also keep in mind of the different skills that you need to demonstrate. So you want to do about 20 minutes of that conversation, because that's going to give you the best opportunity to demonstrate all the different skills that you're going to have to do. So once that's recorded, then you're just going to upload it to YouTube, and then you're going to follow the instructions on how to embed that into Blackboard and submit it to me. And then I will review those and give you feedback. So if you have questions about this particular assignment or any assignments or any of the content up to this point, feel free to email me or call me. I want to make sure everyone is on the same page with this material. It can be a little confusing. However, if you're taking the Intro to Counseling course in tandem with this, then it's going to be, some of this is going to be review, but it's good because that'll help kind of drive home the foundational points. So again, if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, review this video up here regarding the assignments, because it's going to go into a little bit more detail on how to complete that. And we'll see you in the next learning plan.